So, that whole day was once I got to the airport, it was really weird. So, you sometimes hear stories of people saying, "Oh, I knew something bad was going to happen because I woke up late or something." It wasn't quite like that, but it was weird. So, I I show up at the airport and do the check-in, say goodbye to my family, and as we are ready to hop on the plane, normally they would have you board, just like in a normal line, but instead they had employees both at the bottom of the stairs and at the gate to the plane, and we were going one passenger at a time, and I was like, that's weird. And I remember asking someone, like, this is the passengers going in there, it's kind of taking forever, what's going on? And they're like, oh, we have to make sure that the plane is balanced. And I'm like, what does that mean? That doesn't make any sense. But I was like, I don't know anything about aviation, so I might as well just listen to people who do this for a living, right? So I was very trusting. And we go in, the flight is pretty normal. I was actually trying to catch some Z's because I was really tired. And as we were approaching, I had my window down, so I didn't see what was going on the outside from my window, but there were a couple of windows on the right side that were up, not that I could see much. And when the plane initially first hit, I was like, oh, that was kind of weird. That was kind of unexpectedly, tough. But I don't remember people really like reacting. Everyone was just like, oh, it was a hard bounce. So not totally unexpected. I'd flown in those types of planes since 99, and this was in 2004. So I, at least once a year I took a plane there because my dad didn't like driving to San Juan. He was like, I'll just pay the extra money so you get to the airport in my OS. And I was like, okay, fine, whatever. So he would pay the difference. And then it felt like the plane was going back up into the air, and I thought, well, maybe the pilot didn't like that, and so maybe we're gonna do another turn and come back. And that's when when the plane bounced the second time, and I was like, oh, so this is real. It was really hard, and you just hear a bunch of noises and a bunch of metal and just stuff flying everywhere, and it was just bizarre. So some of my thoughts were, okay, I'm gonna die. I am gonna die. This thing is gonna blow up. And because I've watched all these movies and things about disasters, and I'm just in my head, I'm thinking this is like the worst thing ever, and this thing is gonna become a ball of fire, and I'm just gonna die. And I was like, I just hope that I'm not, like, my body doesn't end up, and this is gonna be very graphic, so I apologize. I hope it doesn't give me nightmares. But I was like, I hope that I don't end up cut into a million pieces, that they can, put everything together and get me back to my parents, because I'm sure that they'll want to bury me in, one casket or something. So I honestly thought I was going to die. And I had, like the last few months and years of my life crossing through my head. That was about it. So I honestly thought it was the captain. I didn't necessarily, because I had, other than what I experienced, I really had no idea what was going out. Maybe, like birds get in the way of planes sometimes and cause all sorts of issues and accidents and all that. But that day, I remember I started hearing rumors, I think on the news, either that day or the day after, because it was all over the news, and news reports are saying, oh, right now the airline is not providing very much information, but it seems like it's pilot error. And when you read the report, so after that, a few probably months, I'm going to say months, few months after that, while the National Transportation Safety Board at the NTSB was conducting interviews, so they sent me like an official thing that I had to be home to receive on an envelope. And it was this thing. I have a copy somewhere in my archives that it's a big document. It was like maybe 20, 30 pages long, and it had all these questions. So it was kind of, I think sometimes they call them statement of facts. So I can't remember exactly if they gave us many details about what was going on, but then I kept listening, watching news and stuff like that. And then information slowly started trickling down saying, oh, it was a pilot error, but really the co-pilot was the one who was at fault. And I remember hearing that apparently the pilot had gotten really hurt. So, at first, I would say probably the first 24 to 48 hours, I had no idea who was at fault. And then after that, I started reading that. And then once the official report was released, I was like, oh, so it was the co-pilot who was doing kind of like his first on his own flight thing. And the pilot did not react in time to correct the mistake of the co-pilot. So once the accident happened, we were shuffled into the airport, and we were put in this room which I guess it's a staff room or something. And they started bringing paramedics and stuff like that to evaluate us. And I was probably one of the last ones that they evaluated, because they were doing what's called triage. So they were checking who were the passengers in the worst state and taking them to the hospital. There was a woman who had like this huge panic attack. I don't know how hurt she was, if she was hurt at all, but she just went into this panic attack, and she was just like, I can't breathe. And I remember watching a report on TV that she was one of the passengers who was out, and there was a picture of her taken. I was like, oh, that chick was sitting next to me or something. First the normal announcement of, put your trays back up, straighten your seat, make sure that you are wearing your seatbelt, came up. And I don't remember the pilot saying anything, although I did hear, when I compare notes with other passengers, that some of them heard apparently a Mayday call. So the pilot was saying Mayday, Mayday. But I don't actively remember hearing that. I don't remember hearing anything. I remember seeing, and I remember the smell of things, and the sound, and the feelings around me and what was going on, but I don't remember hearing anything. That it doesn't mean that it didn't happen, but I don't remember hearing anything like a Mayday call. They didn't know. So it was really interesting. So we had if I remember correctly, we had the captain and the co-pilot, and we had at least two flight attendants. But inside the plane as well, there was a pilot. I don't know if it was another pilot from Eagle or from another company. So we had they were flying to San Juan with us, but they were not on duty. So yeah, so they were, and yeah, so they were there were two flight attendants. So crew that was officially working on duty that day was a captain and co-pilot, and that I remember two flight attendants, and there was at least another captain or co-pilot from another airline, plus a flight attendant from another airline. So we had 6 people total who worked in the airline industry, as far as I can remember. And so those 2 other people, they were, once everything kind of stopped, the flight attendants, we were kind of sideways. And so one of the flight attendants was doing a head count, and she said, please don't get up. Let me check, let me count and see how everyone is. And then she went into the cockpit, and her face was completely flushed. And she was, I'd seen her, of course, at the start of the flight. So she was white with blonde hair. She went in, and the minute she came out, I don't know what she saw, but her face, she was white as a ghost. That's all I remember. And it looked really ugly. I don't know what she saw. I don't know if she talked to people in there, because she went in, she closed the door. She comes out like, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes. The marks were really awful. I've seen, you know, because there aren't that many pictures available. And the thing is that I wish I had a camera with me and I was trying to get a hold of it, but they told me not to take pictures, and I wish I had. Um, yeah, that would have been crazy. So I remember, so one did head count, and she was probably approached by the two other passengers who were also in the airline industry, big industry. And together with them, once the second flight attendant came back from the cockpit, she because they were familiar with the evacuation procedures and stuff like that, and then knew where the exits and how to deploy them. I think because the plane was askew, they couldn't access the exit that was on my side. So instead they did the one that was on the right side. And I've been asked a couple of times if like the life vests, or if the what is it called? The lifeboats or anything deployed. And I said, no, nothing, no slides, nothing. No, that was so weird. But I think right. So what we did was that they opened the door, and the plane was askew, but it was also it's kind of weird because it was sideways, but the back part you could still open one of the emergency exits, and we jumped out of the plane. Um, so yeah, yeah. So so you know, we had them there, and all I remember was one of them saying that they needed a head count, and you know, they probably wanted to assess quickly the situation, see if anyone needed to have someone go to the plane itself to, you know, extricate them from it. I don't know how the co-pilot and pilot came out, but I think this, if I recall correctly, the rumor once we were inside the airport was that what really like the response time was pretty fast. And I think what I heard was that there was an emergency vehicle doing rounds. And when they saw the trouble, they started calling to all the appropriate personnel to, you know, move resources over to us, so that when we came out, there were a couple of buses waiting for passengers, and we were shuttled into that to the airport. And then in there, we were taken to like the deep bowels of the building, and then they had emergency people coming by. But that I remember, you know, I don't remember the captain saying anything like Mayday or, you know, we're crashing or something, but I do remember seeing or hearing one of the flight attendants say, I'm going to do a head count, stay seated while I do that. Once kind of everything stopped and we were notified that the exit had been open, the emergency exit had been open, and there were emergency crews that were coming to help us. I got up, and I don't remember if I had a backpack that I was carrying with me, and it was sitting in front of me. So I was able to grab that, and I walked to the back of the plane and then exited and jumped. I don't think that there were that many people who were totally aware of what they, because I think you had to be right around my seat and forward to see what happened to the propellers. So passengers who were sitting towards the back of the plane probably didn't see as much. They probably saw the wing. I don't think they could see the propeller really well. I heard a couple of people, not necessarily screaming, but saying like, "Oh my God," because there were a lot of English speaking people in the flight. And so you know, there were a couple of "Oh my Gods" and "Oh crap." But compared to stuff that you may see on movies or TV, because it was such a sudden thing, we didn't have that much time to react. I think most of us were just in such a deep state of shock. We're like, is this really happening? Because that's what I kept asking myself. I was saying to myself, is this really happening? Um, yeah, because you're just looking around thinking, is this really like what did I get myself into? That's what I kept saying. I kept saying that and thinking, I kept going back and forth between, I cannot believe this is happening. This is truly not happening. This must be a nightmare, to, oh my God, will I survive? That's what I just kept saying. And I remember whenever I tell the story, I always say, well, after this happened, I kept thinking, okay, so I didn't die at this step, but there are all these other things that could happen. And when am I going to die? That's what I kept saying in my brain, you know, when am I going to die in all this? And so, other than the surprises of, oh my God, there weren't that many screams or like, people really in distress, yelling or saying anything. So at first I just kept thinking it's going to explode. I would love to know if the plane was ever refurbished or if it was taken by the feds and, something was done to it. But it was scrapped. Oh, I had no idea. At first I thought that it was going to explode, and when it didn't, I was like, okay, so I guess the movies have been lying to us. Ooh, well, that's a really great question. I think before I was very trusting, and I thought that, that plane crashes and tragedies could still happen, but that they could happen to other people, to other countries who didn't have like security and safety protocols in place and didn't follow them. But the truth is that whenever you're dealing with humans, errors can happen. So it makes me, I don't like flying. I like going to places, but I don't like flying. So now whenever I go on a flight, I have to really psych myself up. The first year and a half, the first 18 months after, I could not sleep at all the day before a flight. And I think it was so that once I was in the plane, I could just close my eyes and fall asleep. But I used to just be really tired and really cranky. So it's made me more aware of safety protocols and very, very cognizant of that. But it's also made me not trust planes as much as I used to. I know about statistics and I know about, whether it could or couldn't happen to me again. But it was really bizarre. So I'm not as trusting as I once was. I think, so it was a combination of both disbelief of, oh my goodness, this really happened. And then I thought, oh, I can't wait to see my family. And I kind of, inside in my head, I was freaking out because I'm thinking, and I'm glad that this happened before the era of social media, because they would have probably had my phone, exploding with calls and stuff like that. And I'd gone to Puerto Rico, and the cell phone that I was carrying with me had stopped working. So I had to get a replacement, and the replacement that they got me was equally bad. So when I could find signal, I remember calling my mom. And so my mom and my dad had gone to the airport with different cars. And I called my sister and I said, is mom with you? And she said, yes. And I said, put her on. And she's like, is everything okay? And I said, you'll find out soon enough. And she's like, what? And I said, put mom on. So she puts my mom on. And when my mom's like, hey, how's it going? She's all happy. And I said, hey mom, I'm walking, I'm cognizant. I am aware of everything, my surroundings, everything that should be attached to my body is attached to my body. Well, the plane crashed. And my sister says that my mom collapsed. And then I called my dad, and my dad is like, hey honey, you're in San Juan early. And I said, yeah, dad. So you're going to see something on the news and it's going to look uglier than it is, but I'm in one piece. And he's like, what the hell happened? I said, the plane crashed. And he's like, what? So, so they, after, you know, I don't know how long it was. I was in San Juan probably for a couple of hours. They put me and another passenger on a cab back to Cabo Rojo. And they actually took us to the Mayagüez airport. And when I got there, my parents got there at the same time as the cab, and my dad left the car running in the middle of the road, and he and my mom raced to hug me. And then it was the tour around the family so they could see me and stuff like that. And I was like, oh my God, my grandma saw me, my aunt saw me, my cousins, my sister, everyone. They were like, oh my God, I'm so happy you're alive. And just, I couldn't deal with that much attention. It was kind of freaking me out. You know, and I'm thankful for that. But at the time it was like, I just want to go to my bedroom and sleep. That's all I want to do. I've been running on adrenaline. Yeah. So it was a combination of both freaking out and thinking, oh, even though this was not my problem, this is not caused by me, it's going to freak my family out. How am I going to deal with this? But I am glad that it didn't happen in the time of social media, because then it would have been really bad. So before that, I, you know, I had like full trust on institutions and on companies and stuff like that. And after that, I kind of became a little skeptical that companies truly had the best intentions and the best interest of the customer in mind. So it made me a lot, it made me not trust corporate culture and corporations themselves and companies as much. And it really showed me that I could only count on myself and on the people who hopefully were well trained to help me get out of the situation. But it made me really skeptical. So